Hello, everybody. This is Love from Above with your Sibling Spirit Guides. I'm Maureen, and this is my brother.
Hey Maureen, hey everyone, this is Brian.
Hey, Brian. If you can believe this, on this podcast, we share daily channelings we receive from star beings, ascended masters, mythical beings who really exist, and occasionally our ancestors. And today's topic, oh my gosh, Brian, I never thought I would say these words, but heard from Jesus. Can you believe it?
Yeah, pretty amazing, huh?
And we heard on Valentine's Day, which I did not realize until I was assembling this podcast together. But what a beautiful Valentine's Day gift, a message from Jesus, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a little surprising, but like I said, I'm never surprised of anything any after the, the the different channelings we've heard from, but it is amazing.
Yeah, and I think this message sounds very much like Jesus too. So I'll just get right into it. He said, so it was someone else who was speaking before we heard from Jesus. They said, we bring forth another. And then there was a little bit of angelic humor. He serves as chairman of the board. That's a joke. He serves all who rightly come to this banquet to dine at his table. Then Jesus speaks and he said, hello, Maureen and Brian. We treasure an opportunity like this. I plan to go slowly so that each word is carefully understood. A garden always grows. Even the fallow field brilliantly grows. The activity taking place beneath the ground. In the general region of the human brain, there is much activity. Quieting, sequestering oneself, as you have done this morning, allows you to peer beneath the soil to ascertain that growth has indeed occurred, though it may not be visible to others. This field must be constantly nourished. Even in the off season, this field requires care. The same is true for you. The attention required pertains to the spiritual matters of which we speak today. So I'll pause right there. What did you think about this, brother?
I thought it was amazing, and I although I'm not a farmer, I did have to look up fallow, and its actual definition is a part of the land left for a period unsown or unplanted to restore its fertility, or it's also known as crop rotation. But anyway, yeah, I love when they give analogies, and I think it's very, very meaningful one, so that the field must be constantly nourished. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I love this analogy. And again, it just sounds very much like a Jesus analogy to me, but that even if the field is fallow, that there's still activity taking place and there's still growth. So even if you're in a place in your life where you feel stuck and the same thing's happening over and over again, and you're in a routine that you're not really happy about, there's growth that's taking place that if you step back, you could probably appreciate. So, and then he goes on, I think in a very Jesus-like way. He says, I am called a shepherd, and my followers are referred to as a flock. The analogy is a good one, for the true shepherd never leaves his field. In the same way, you and your brother are always cared for. The sheep may not notice a skilled shepherd's presence. That does not mean the shepherd is not present. In the same way, the love and care I have for all beings is a constant presence. So, isn't that reassuring?
Yeah, it's a great message. So, and yeah, when you totally think of the shepherd, and so I love that. Yeah, even when um the sheep may not notice their presence, that doesn't mean the shepherd is not present. So I think that applies to so many people who think that, there's no one looking out for them, but there really is. So something to keep in mind for all of us.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, every single night, every single night that I can see, I see a host of divine beings sending me light. So, I think I'm fortunate to know that I'm never alone. And I'm always tempted when they ask me, like in this hotel when I go down for breakfast, they're like, you're alone, right? And I always want to say, no, I'm not. I'm never alone. But yeah, so it's a beautiful message. And again, I'm just grateful to receive it on Valentine's Day. Best Valentine for this year.
Perfect. So then it's then they actually 4 days later we got another message, and it was actually the teachings of Jesus. And so there are many who wish to discuss important matters. We select the most pressing for today's subject, the life of Christ. His loving presence is never departed from this beloved planet. We wish to discuss his teachings, which have been relegated in fragmented form that rarely serves its ultimate purpose. If you are a master, you may be able to assimilate the teachings from such fragmented bits and pieces. There is no blame or ignorance associated with these important teachings. Over the course of time, such dissolution is a natural occurrence. The truth of the teachings remain intact. Um, and they just gone before I take a break. We comment on the fractal nature of the remains of his teachers present in your holy books just to suggest that there is more. So let me stop there. So we've, I think, read about this a lot that, Jesus was a lot different than portrayed in the current Bible, and there was a lot more to it. And I think that's probably what they're um, leaving out. I guess, what are your thoughts on the missing pieces that are not included in the current Bible?
Yeah, well, I actually looked some of this up, and so we know that, there are missing pieces because politics that were involved where, the Bible was changed. And but I also didn't, they point out to there's a natural dissolution of this material too, because when I was looking it up, they said, just you have to remember that these original teachings were wrote down on papyrus and parchment, which are both natural materials which can easily be affected by, wind, water, air, and that the scribes who copied down these materials could make mistakes. And but there's a bunch of books that are missing. We've read a bunch of them. I looked this up. I mean, the Book of Enoch, which I just finished, was actually found in the Dead Sea Scrolls and was not included in the Bible. And then I've read the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which were once in the Bible and later rejected. And there are a bunch of ones. The one that I would like to read now is the book. These were books that were mentioned in the Bible, but not included now. The book of Gad the Seer. As a seer, I would like to read about the book of Gad the Seer and book of Nathan the prophet, So some of these sounds really interesting, but so wouldn't that be an interesting project for someone to, put this all together, so we wouldn't have these fragmented teachings anymore?
Totally. Yeah. So I think Dolores Cannon wrote, I mean, we read about this whole thing about Jesus and the scenes and what Jesus was like, and it was someone channeled from during that time when Jesus was alive, and it was really interesting. But so I'll go on. They go on also to say the life of Jesus was meant to be an example of the possibility of human life. For what Jesus achieved is attainable for all. The silver light of the Christ the silver light of the Christ he implanted within the spherical natures of this planet. This Christ conscious now weaves into natural fabric of planetary life. And that way, the true teachings of the one known as Jesus can be found in a river, a snail, a leaf of a tree, and in your own exemplary lives. For you are the embodied Christ. Christ never dies, but lives on, and those who live on and under his planet, this planet. The revived teachings of the Christ can come forward if one chooses to unify the old books into an assembled and orderly form, as you were mentioning. This can be done and will be done to augment the teaching process on this beloved planet. So, I mean, the other interesting thing I think is um, from some of those Dolores Cannon books is like he didn't want the message to be about him, which, it's like sort of like Thoth says, it's about the message, not the messenger. Um, so that's another aspect that I think that goes that people don't realize. That's one thing I recall, but yeah, I think it's just a great message that, his embodiment lives on, and I totally believe in all that. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think of my youngest child. We were in a part of India that was very Catholic when they were like 6 years old, and they were horrified by all of the very bloody, gory pictures of Jesus on the cross. And my youngest child said, "Why did they pick this image to glorify the life of Jesus?" Which is a very good question. And I don't think I think also Jesus would choose a different image, probably love, of what was the possibility of human life as opposed to, uh,
Right.
his his death. And then the other thing, Brian, we've read about this. We've read about, and I can't recall because we've read so many books, but we've read about how the grid around the earth has changed, and that we've read about this Christ consciousness grid, which I think is really interesting, that that was an ulterior purpose of his life too, was to change the grid of the planet with this Christ consciousness grid. Do you know what I'm talking about? We've read about this, I think, in multiple sources.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's also Drenvelo talks about that, and he had to help. It was at the end of, I think, was it 2012 or whenever it was, when the Mayan period was ending. Remember, in one of those books, he had to go to all those Mayan temples and you know place some crystals in certain spot to help with this grid. And there's actually a meditation that he does that sends energy and light up through the Christ consciousness grid. So I think that might be one of the things. But yeah, I totally know what you mean. That's an aspect of what's going on today.
Yeah. So, yeah, and again, just grateful to get these messages. And then going through our past channelings. So, I found some other channelings that mentioned Jesus. And the first one I found was on March 9th of last year, and said, "Hello, dearest one. We are delighted to communicate in this fashion. We have talked with many on your planet. We communicate regularly with your so-called political leaders. We are deemed the vessels with whom regulations from the Universal Index are relayed to Earth. We shall begin with the laws. The first law pertains to the ruling edict of love. Every act shall begin of the highest place of coming from the space of love. To utilize this law within your own lives would indeed cause a revolution. This is a law which Jesus brought to earth, although it was not fully understood by humankind at that time." Again, Jesus is all about love, man. Love, love, love.
Yeah, right, right. Um, yeah, so it's interesting because and I like how that it's the first law. But anyway, yeah, that's what we're all about, and this is t totally aligned with everything we've talked about earlier. So totally agree. Um, then there was from August 11th of last year a message from the Pleiadians, and they said, "We congratulate you on your single focus of aspiring to greater heights of carrying the love and light of the one creator. This is the task that the one known as Jesus set before humankind. His message gets lost in the details. The true message of his life and death was the transcendence of light, which he carried as he journeyed on his winding path in contact with multiple souls." So yeah, that's what I think instead of, you're right, his everywhere being on the cross or his death, he would prefer that the true message of his life be the transcendence of light. Um, but I think we've discussed that already, but it's another proof of that point, right?
Yeah, and a lot of, I mean, I'm with my youngest child. A lot of those pictures can be really, really gory with blood and, a gruesome face on Jesus and yeah, both of these point to Jesus's message not being fully understood by humankind. And I go back to their point about the teachings. So, I mean, I do think I know a lot of people would probably be against it because they consider like these holy books sacred, but it would be helpful if someone could, put them all together and include all of these books that were not either ejected or, taken out for one reason or another. So, and like I said, I've read the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, both of which are really, really lovely and very powerful. So I have no idea why they were taken out, but they're no longer in there.
Yeah, who knows? It also it has to do probably with the Catholic Church at the time, and I think they were very powerful and wanted certain things, you know, that didn't align with their message to be removed. So, but who knows the whole story there? But we have to look in that. I wonder if it's been done. You'd think someone would have gone and created a book with all this, but something we have to follow up and see if there's anything out there on this.
Yeah. And I do want to mention I had told Brian before we started recording. So I've read a lot about Mary Magdalene. It's very interesting. A lot of people purport that she was Jesus's wife, and there is a kind of a hint to that if you read the Gospel according to Mary Magdalene. But I was very happy that she has been renounced as a prostitute. The Catholic Church has admitted that she was not a prostitute. And the latest Pope, is he Francis II, Brian, has elevated her to the same level as the apostles. And he said that she's the apostle of the apostles. So she's been elevated from being a prostitute to being one of the apostle of the apostles. God bless.
I know. I've got a few books in my to read list about, but I haven't read a lot about her, so I do need to do some my own.
It's a
Reading.
fascinating story. I mean, and it's, as you know from, I know you use Reddit a lot, like it's just another rabbit hole you can go down
Yeah.
and I don't know, one year, I think it was like 2016, I went through the Mary Magdalene and there's a lot of information on it. And it's just a really fascinating story. And as a young girl growing up in the Catholic Church, like there's not a lot of I was gravitated towards Mary Magdalene. Like Mary the mother just seemed like so perfect, you know what I mean? And I don't know. So she was always kind of important to me, and so I'm personally very happy with her redemption.
Yeah, perfect.
So I wanted to close off with my favorite Jesus saying, which is "Be not afraid." Brian, how many times do I have to go over this? Like, I really believe it's love or fear, love or fear. It's binary. But did you know that "Be not afraid" is written in the Bible 365 times, which gives us a daily reminder to live fearlessly every day?
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
so true. It's love, not fear. So great
Yeah.
way to end this one, Maureen.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.